why should you paint miniatures from another system?
I felt so like free. The pressure was just completely off.
You can approach the thing you do more of the time with a better mindset.
Being out of your comfort zone more makes you way more competent in your comfort zone.
When you've got to think differently to what you normally do, it breeds creativity.
Hello everyone and welcome to Paint Perspective, episode 81. In this episode, we're going to be talking about what to paint if you're bored of Warhammer. We're going to be talking about the news, some awesome new miniatures from Games Workshop, of course, our question of the week and our hobby hacks. But first, Joe, looking very smug this week.
It's just so good to be back.
I think that was the word vindication, but in a sentence, basically.
Yeah. We might as well start there, I suppose. The episode, not last week's episode, obviously I wasn't on it, the Middle Earth episode. Very interesting nonetheless. But the week before that, the £100
challenge,
hobby setup challenge. Should we start there?
Yeah.
Because did any of you, I know we don't get too much time to read through the comments, but I don't know if you managed to glance over.
Oh, I glanced, Joe. I glanced quite a lot, Joe, because I've got an angle to put on this as well, which I'm gonna.
We'll let you take the floor though. You can have your moment.
To be fair, my moment has been the last 2 weeks. There has been non-stop influx of people in support of one of the opinions that I voiced on that episode. If you haven't listened to it, just as a brief overview, number one, go back and listen to it, what you're playing at. Number two, we set these parameters for this hobby challenge.
No, I think slight adjustment there, Joe.
Yeah.
Me and you didn't set the parameters.
No, George
set the parameters for this. Yeah, let's just get that right.
George set some parameters for this £100 budget hobby setup challenge. We didn't call it that because it doesn't quite roll off the tongue.
when you say parameters, it's a bit vague though. Do you not agree?
It was quite vague.
Yeah, it was
a bit vague.
Hang on, what? You're switching sides now.
Oh no, Joe. Oh no, George. Oh no, George. I've got some. I'm going to weigh in on this as well.
Okay, so the rules that I got told were you don't have to include a chair.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to include a table.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You don't have to include a lamp because
you should buy an onyx.
Number one, you should buy an onyx. But number two, we knew that would take up a fair bit of the budget, and we wanted to kind of diversify the lists a little bit.
I agree. Yeah.
And you don't have to include a paint collection, which a lot of people didn't understand. So just to clarify, that list, the intention wasn't here's everything you possibly need to start painting models. It was if you had £100 outside of those things, what could you buy?
I'm going to add on to that as well. The idea was setup challenge. It was the tools and the equipment you need. It wasn't here's everything you need to paint models. Otherwise, we would have had to include the models.
Yeah. Otherwise, exactly. So a few people were a bit confused about that, but I think paint collection is like incredibly personal to what you're painting anyway. I'm not going to sit here and tell you what paints to buy. So
I'm recommending like a starter set would be silly anyway because it's going to depend on the models you're painting. It might not have the colours you need.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's that. But the key part of that was that obviously the paint collection, you didn't have to include any paint. That was the words. You didn't have to include any paint. So when I rocked up and heard George rattle off the things that we were including and include primer, I was a little bit
taken back, would you say?
Taken aback, because I thought, well, the reason I didn't include primer, bear in mind I was splashing the cash at the end of mine. I was buying Haribos and God knows what.
One brush as well.
Yeah, one brush. You only need one.
It's only one. That's fine.
So I didn't include primer because I was under the impression that we didn't have to include paint. But then I rock up and you two have both included primer. So it was a bit confusing. And we put it to the audience. What side do they sit on? And the comments speak for themselves. If you're not going to go and watch the episode, just click on it on YouTube and read through the comments and you'll see where the community's opinion lies on that matter. How do you answer?
All right, hang on. All I'm going to say is I want my £12 back. All right, okay. I want my £12 back so I can buy other things. All right, okay. Because I included it because I was like, it was a bit vague. I was like, I'll include it. I kind of went the opposite way. I thought, well, you said no paint, but spray can for me is everything that paint goes on top of. So I was like, I'll buy that. Yep. That's why I bought it. I wasn't sure.
Look,
okay,
hang on. I wasn't sure. I'll just settle on my I'm not aiming this at James. James was as in the dark as I
know.
was.
No.
And he's just
as dark as colourful black mat.
He's just unfortunate enough to land on the wrong side of the fence.
I know.
Okay.
Luckily or not luckily, I
don't know. Well, according to George's rules, luckily you landed on the wrong side of the fence.
Apparently,
yeah.
While James is busy trying to throw himself in as a victim as well, I'm going to rebuttal with this. First of all, James, you're not off the chopping block because you brought no receipts. The viewers fact-checked a lot of your results. They were complete rubbish. The prices were made up, didn't include shipping. It was like random eBay listings.
Two things. Number one, I searched using Amazon Prime, so the prices are slightly cheaper. So there was that.
I didn't include shipping either.
Yeah, and I didn't include shipping because I didn't know that was... Again, the rules should have said...
Although mine were still legit prices, though. I provided links.
The rules should have said... needs to include shipping, otherwise I would have completely rebudgeted it.
Hang on, let's not talk about this because he's diverting the attention.
I'll go back to the primer. Here's where I'm coming from, right? Yeah. I find it very interesting. You might recall earlier in the year, we had a little bit of a debate about primer. Mm-hmm. And funny enough, at the time, we was getting a lot of sticks saying primer isn't paint and that primer is a different product. And we was talking about what makes a primer because some spray cans are like colour spray, some are plastic primer.
No, you're not getting it out of it that easy. Primer, we were saying that primer doesn't have the same properties as regular acrylic paint that you put on your models.
So therefore it'd be unreasonable to call it paint because it's different.
Did either of you buy varnish?
No.
So you're never varnishing any of your models?
I don't usually varnish.
Or did you include varnish in your paint collection?
A varnish is optional. Primer is not optional. Well, it is optional.
Yeah,
but...
exactly. Look, the facts are primer is a type of paint. End of. The community has spoken.
However, I would have bought another brush. I would have bought another brush. I would have bought a better scalpel.
I've lost faith in the comments.
I did buy Haribo's.
Yeah, I know you did.
I've lost faith in the comments, and here's why. Everyone was pulling me up for the amount that I'd spent on one of my paintbrushes.
We did predict,
forgetting the fact that Joe actually had the most expensive paintbrush, and in a £100 painting challenge, I'm the only one who showed up with paintbrushes.
No, I had one.
What do you mean? We both had paintbrushes.
Brushes, plural.
Yeah.
Yeah? You only need one. I use one.
Just because you wasted your money on other stuff.
Yeah.
You wasted your money on other stuff. You bought Haribo's.
I'm not going to lie.
Is that a waste? Is that a waste?
So many DMs from people going, how did you let George spend that much money on a palette when he was admitting in the video that he would rather have had the palette that I set up?
He just wanted a fancy container. Look, the point is, primer is paint. In terms of, would it be considered part of your paint collection? Yes.
I think George owes us an IOU.
Overwhelming.
No, you followed along.
Yes,
he does this. He's twisting it.
I'm not twisting it.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I'm letting that go.
I would have literally bought about 4 or 5 other things if I had £12 left of the budget.
I'm just saying the listeners have spoken. I don't think, I'm going to say this now, I don't think we've ever had a response so unanimously in favour of one of these arguments. Like, say when you were arguing about
black and brown base rims,
it was split fairly down the middle.
No, I don't know about that.
Drilling the.
I don't know about that, Joe.
Being kind. And drilling the barrels. Yep. It was like you saw arguments for both sides. People that have now tried James's bizarre way of doing it and enjoy it. That sort of thing.
Works.
It was, but this. I'm sorry, this was overwhelming. However, I did then put like a poll out on Instagram and it was way closer. I mean, obviously, most people still said that primer is paint. It was way closer than it should have been considering there is an objective answer. But quite a lot of people, I think it was 54%.
To be precise,
said that they wouldn't. 54% wouldn't have included primer in their list given the parameters that we were given, and the rest said that they I think they would have included it. However, do you know what? I hadn't obviously heard James's true feelings on it at this point. Do you want to know? You should have seen my face when I got the notification that James had voted in the poll and had sided with me.
I did. But I think in future, whenever we do one of these things, it needs to be a clear, defined category.
I think James is playing Italy in this conversation. He's seen that he's on the losing side and he's swapping over.
No, I'm just look. I respect a man that can look back at his decisions with new information.
Exactly. Yeah.
See other sides and go, do you know what? I was in the.
I'm quite happy to go. I was wrong to include it. I would have spent the 12 quid
I don't
on
think you
another.
were wrong. The argument that I'm making is
Yeah.
neither here nor there with is primer paint or not, because that's going to be up to your interpretation.
But
The argument that
that's
I'm
the key
making
to it.
the argument that I'm making was that primer was implied on what the list you should have included was.
No, because I included it.
So implied that 2 out of the 3 people decided to include it.
Yeah,
as
because-
interpreted by the rules.
Yeah, because it was a bit vague. It was like paint's included, but you didn't say paint includes primer or doesn't exclude primer. It was just paint's included.
It was everything to
So-
set up and get
so
ready
I bought it,
to paint a model.
I bought it because I wasn't sure whether it was included or not.
How is
Simple as
primer?
that.
Primer is painting the model. You're applying paint to the model. That is part of
I see
painting.
that's prep. I see that's prep.
That is part of
See,
painting.
that's where things they're
Yeah.
different.
I don't what George is wrong. But that's where it gets
How
difficult.
uncommon for this
I
podcast.
would-
George is wrong. Everyone disagrees with George.
People did rightly flame your list though.
Yeah,
in
they
the
did.
comments.
What do you mean
100%.
rightly?
It was
100%.
because your list was trash. It's rubbish.
Yeah.
You thought you tried to get out there with the palette, didn't you? You thought you
Yeah.
had a big mic drop, and it didn't.
Yeah.
It sort
Mic
of-
flop.
It was like a mic. It was more of a mic disintegration, I think. As you,
Yeah.
That's fine with me.
But,
Yeah.
I do still think somewhere in the middle of all 3 lists.
I
is
think
the
you
list.
could easily, from all 3, you could get a really good collection of stuff that
Yeah.
gives you a good.
If you had to
good
pick
setup.
one, obviously go with mine. But then if you could do,
I wonder if you're a true listener of the podcast, if you're even remotely surprised by anyone's list. I feel like they know us by now. I feel like everyone's list was very on brand.
I did see as well. I felt a little bit bad, but like obviously when I mentioned the magnifiers, you both like cracked up laughing, and there was a couple of people commenting like, "What's so funny about magnifiers? Like I use magnifiers all the time." But I think you were laughing more because it was like the in joke.
It was
like,
on brand.
It was
yeah,
like the
yeah.
in joke of the previous thing. It wasn't like, "Oh, how stupid is that?" Like there was people even defending me about that. Like you were laughing at my magnifiers, and that was a good
Yeah,
choice.
but in the
So-
grand scheme of things, I would have rather bought the magnifiers than spend $32.95 on a palette.
obviously, yeah.
So would I. I'm not in favour of the price of the palette,
Yeah.
but unfortunately,
But you even
It
admitted.
is what it is.
You even
Yeah.
admitted. I just want a good container. You
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah. Well,
I didn't say
just-
everyone has to copy my list. I said my list is my list.
Just want to
I haven't
boost your
actually had
box.
an apology yet either, which
Look,
feel
I don't
like-
need to apologise. Okay, I changed sides because
it
you're
depends-
right.
it depends.
You're right.
I
Very
can't-
conveniently changed
no,
sides.
Yeah.
I want
But
the 12.
up until about 3 minutes ago, James was comfortably on my side.
Jog on.
Well, no, because
Second we hit the record button.
No, because
voted-
I voted on the poll. I agreed.
he voted in the poll like
Playing
the
both
day
sides
after.
here, James.
No,
Very sly.
I was
Very
literally
sly.
like, what? How many things can I get for the £12 I spent that primer? I was looking. I actually jumped
Do
back.
you know how many candles he could have bought for that 12 quid?
Yeah. I
Yeah,
did.
do you know how many? How many trips to IKEA that would have funded?
Yeah.
For his-
I could have got.
Or
I could have got.
B&Q.
Yeah, I could have got
As
another
exchange.
12. Another 24 rolls of Blitz, mate.
No, because
Like,
that was one of the prices that was a bit iffy on yours, I think.
what, the Blitz.
Yeah.
No, there was a deal on
No,
B&Q.
Blitz didn't meet the fact check, I'm afraid.
There was a deal on B&Q.
I have to say, as we spoke about in the podcast, I was planning on stopping at B&Q on the way home to get that. I checked online. It was not buy one, get one free. And it was not for a pack of 6. It was a pack of 3 was in 3 for 2, which is significantly less
It was
than getting
definitely
12 rolls.
It was
for
definitely
£6. What I will say
12
is,
rolls.
either way with that, with James's one, whether you get 12 rolls or you get 3 or whatever, the price was still there and you still get Blitz.
Yeah.
Realistically, you don't need 12.
Either way, I
rolls.
could have spent that 12 quid on another brush, more Blitz, another Tupperware. I could have bought double palette. I could have done a double palette setup for that.
The biggest shock for me was getting as much heat for the palette as my brush choice.
Did you
What
get
was-
heat for your brush choice?
I did get heat for the brush choice.
What, for the ludicrously crazy Winsor Newton?
Oh, is it
pointless
'cause you did
brush?
a win?
I had wins in it.
Oh, because you did the tiny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the
That's
thing
fair.
is, I don't know. I think the miniature size, like more sharper brushes, I do think they're very good. I do think they're good.
I said they're
But-
insane. I said they're insanely expensive, but I haven't found anything.
But
to
within a
replace them.
£100
So,
challenge, I definitely wouldn't have included one.
I think if you've got 100 quid to play with, you should get the best brushes you can. The most important part of the setup, the brushes.
Yeah. And then after that, obviously, I'm not on last week, and I hear you coming up with the things for, oh, what if there was a kill team Middle Earth? And I was screaming at the TV, I was screaming at my phone, Battle Companies exists. And I knew for a fact, look, all I'm saying is just for all the Middle Earth viewers and the people that enjoyed that, we're looking forward to that podcast. If I was here, I wouldn't have let George said that it was a dead game for a start.
Yeah, do you know
I
what?
would've put my foot down a little bit on that.
I'm gonna do play. Oh, well, apparently I'm playing Italy, so I'll carry on.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that was going to be the name of the episode. So
no, well, that wasn't
So
really.
I would've-
That wasn't really what I was getting at, because obviously I'm saying in the episode you were like, oh, it's a bit of a die. It felt like a dying game or whatever.
I would have
just
done a
don't think
Boromir and got
don't
my
think
shield and defended
don't
it,
think
but like
it did. And then also, because I know for a fact there's a certain listener in Barrett who would have
flip the table.
I wouldn't have heard the end of it if I let that slide. So I'm glad I wasn't on that one, really. But battle companies.
So I was close. I was close with the name Skirmish.
Allegedly one of the better skirmish games out of any of the systems. Everyone loves it. I don't think it's supported now, but I think it's a contained book that you can just buy.
Okay.
So you can, and it's got all the lists, everything. So
That's
it's just
great.
like one book. You can
Obviously,
just buy.
new models and stuff. You can't use any new models from it, but
yeah,
you can just
I
proxy and say this model is.
I imagine
like,
you can. I imagine there's some kind of fan-driven thing for it.
Must be, yeah.
If not,
Must be.
there could be. Obviously, the new models haven't been out that long. So,
No, that's fair.
but yeah, the battle companies. And yeah, I only know that because I nearly got into it once because of Barrett.
Yeah.
I had a little list. All the lists were like pre-written. Yeah, it did seem pretty cool.
Okay,
So. Yeah, I think that's all the spring cleaning done for that, isn't it? For the last couple of weeks. I'll await on my apology, I suppose. But George is just going to.
Don't worry, I'm sure I'll be wrong about something else this week.
I just want categoric list of we're doing this challenge. These are the parameters. So then there's no.
Tell you what, James, why don't you write the next weekly challenge?
Okay, all right, I'll come up with a challenge. That's fine. We can do that.
If you're a miniature painter, you'll know how important it is to have the right tools for the hobby. But it doesn't matter what brushes or paints you have if you can't see what you're doing in the first place. If you want to improve your painting, contorting yourself under a small, repurposed lamp from around the house, giving yourself a backache and straining your eyes just isn't going to cut it. That's why one of the biggest upgrades I've ever made to my painting setup was my Onyx painting lamp from Native Lighting. Its articulating arm allows me to sit in the perfect painting position for those long hobby sessions, and its super bright 2200 lumen, dimmable LEDs cast soft and diffused light on my models without any harsh shadows. As someone with a very small hobby space, by far my favourite feature is its adjustable mounting clamp, which attaches to the side of my desk, maximising my free workspace. And its daylight colour balance temperature of 6500K gives you the confidence that colours you are painting are accurate and your miniatures will pop on the tabletop. To upgrade your setup to the equipment we rely on here at Siege Studios, head to the link in this episode's description or go to siegestudios.co.uk/shop. Main topic for this week. If you're bored of Warhammer, what should you paint instead? We obviously talk about Warhammer 40k. It's the main, pillar of this this podcast, I would say. Mainly because I'd say it's what we love the most and it's what we have the most experience with and it's what we do the most day to day. However, that doesn't mean that we only paint Warhammer. That doesn't mean that we only like Warhammer. I myself personally have painted tons of miniatures from other manufacturers, other war games and so on. So I thought it'd be nice to do like a self-contained episode for maybe if someone has painted a lot of Warhammer and is looking to maybe try something else, they can use this episode as a bit of a guide for recommendations. And importantly, maybe if you haven't done that or you're not looking to do that, why should you paint miniatures from another system or another war game? Maybe what you can learn from that as a painter. Joe, you're coming in hot with your recent acquisition.
Yeah, so we touched on this a couple of weeks ago where I got sent the RuneScape Kingdoms Shadow of Elvarg core box set. And the reason I really wanted to get into this, or at least try this, is because this was an episode idea that was kicking around for a while. But like I say, I've never deviated from Warhammer at all, really. I haven't painted anything outside of Warhammer. And I haven't even played that much in terms of a game that involves miniatures outside of Warhammer. Obviously, I played a lot of board games and done like some D&D and stuff like that. But in terms of an actual like tabletop kind of game or board game that also has a miniatures element to it, I really haven't gone into that world at all. And then I saw this RuneScape game, and I used to love RuneScape. So this is one where like I feel like I need that attachment of loving the
IP or the
game. Or the game or just the design and stuff. And that's why we all love Warhammer, right? That's why we love 40k, is because we're invested in all that other stuff. And I feel like I've kind of struggled to be that passionate about a different IP in board game format. Even when I used to be a bit of a comic book nerd and stuff, but then by the time all the Marvel stuff rolled around, I wasn't really super interested in that, and I didn't really care to get involved in that kind of thing. But RuneScape will always have a special place in my heart, specifically old school RuneScape. And I was very pleased to see that a lot of the design elements and the choices and things and just how the game's written and everything does seem to be based on old school RuneScape, especially the design of the models, which I'll get into in a minute. I honestly didn't know what to expect, to be honest. I think it clearly does. It's the biggest difference for me is with Warhammer models. The whole intention is very clearly high detailed, and they're to be painted to a high level in some cases. With these, I didn't even know if are they even intended to be painted. It's like we were talking about a little bit before, where it's like they're like gaming tokens more than anything. Because it is a board game.
Yeah.
It is a board game. Basically my outline of it is that it's a board game with board gaming tokens that are some cool characters, and
they're just to represent you in the game.
There's some role playing elements to the board game.
Do you think when the plastic is coloured as well, it's kind of implying
that you don't need to paint them?
That you don't need to paint them.
Yeah. So I guess my big question that I wanted to answer was, okay, you don't need to paint them, but if I want to paint them, how's that going to go?
Yeah.
So that was my big question, because I haven't dealt with models that are designed like this before. I haven't dealt with models that are made of this material before. I haven't dealt with any of this. I've only started painting one of them, and it was really weird because the first kind of thing that I realized, I sat down to paint as I normally would, and then I was like, oh, I don't actually have a reference to go off of. So you kind of have to make those decisions yourself, I guess is what I'm getting at. I decided, okay, well, because each of these characters in the box has a starter version of the character and then a inspired version of the character, I was like, okay, well, he's obviously the starter version, so I'm going to have to go for what would have been a basic level armor, if that makes sense.
That makes sense.
But just approaching that was so I didn't even think of it. And then I was sat down and I was like, oh, I don't know, is he supposed to have a good weapon, or is he supposed to have a beginner weapon or a good armor or whatever? And
so it did prompt questions about when
exactly. And it's
I suppose in a way that's kind of the advantage from their design side of choosing not to have them painted or anything. It's kind of ambiguous as to what they could have at any given moment.
Exactly, yeah. Because I imagine as you play more through the game, I've only played the first mission and then a bit of the second mission. I imagine the more you play through it, you potentially pick up new bits of inventory and stuff like that. Because like I say, the knight as well, just to touch on, is probably the only one. All of these, there isn't really named characters in the way that we're used to in RuneScape. There's not really. There is NPCs that you talk to and stuff. Mm-hmm. But because I think any of the adventurers or any of your characters obviously don't have a name, they're completely customized to you, and there's thousands of them. None of these are actually based on iconic characters or anything like that. It's not like approaching a Star Wars one where you've got, I've got to paint Luke Skywalker and a set way to do things.
Yeah, no, totally.
It was just a fun thing of I hadn't really thought about that, and I guess you can kind of do what you want with them and it also be accurate. I can tell my version of that character's story through the painting of it and feel a little bit more like it's appropriate. Whereas because with Warhammer, we all say all the time you can paint Warhammer as much as you like, any way you want, and you can do anything you want. But for me, there's always that niggling thing of but there is a set way to do it.
Yeah,
there is
at least a guideline, a
point. There is a law appropriate way to do it with Warhammer. So even though you can go off on your own and do whatever you want, maybe just the way my brain's wired or whatever, but there's always just a little niggling bit where I'm like, oh, but that's not the official way to do it. Do you know what I mean? Whereas it's completely open.
The best way to explain it's like a Space Marine chapter, is laid out a certain way, but all the other nuances like the color, the iconography, maybe the way they have their hair, all that kind of stuff, that you can still do that creative side of it. But they would still have 10 companies.
Yeah.
With the captain, with the chaplain, or all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So, but like overall, obviously, I've only started painting one of them. So from the painting side, I actually, for the little amount of work that I've put into that single model, literally all I've done is base coat everything barring the sword currently. I think potentially by the time I send George a picture, I might have done the sword as well. But and then I've shaded some of the armor, and because it's like there's no pressure there really. I felt that's a big thing I felt was there's no real pressure to paint it to a super high level because it's a board gaming piece. It's not this army that I'm going to cherish for the rest of my life kind of thing.
But equally, like seeing that on the table there, it looks infinitely better to have that painted model, basic as it may be, compared to just the plastic.
Yeah,
definitely.
I agree,
my big worry was I'm going to start painting this and I'm going to go, I should have these aren't supposed to be painted. Do you know what I mean? So I do like that you can paint them if you want, and you do get the benefit from it. They do look better. I'm already looking forward to playing the game again with a couple of actual painted models. You know what I mean?
Definitely.
So yeah, we'll touch on it a bit more in a little bit.
Yeah, we'll circle on to some of those points maybe in a bit. James, I want to pass it over to you.
Mm-hmm.
What are some other systems that you enjoy specifically other than Warhammer? Is there maybe one that sticks out to you as like your go-to?
They've only really arisen in the last couple of years, being honest, because I was hardcore. I was before Joe took the mantle as the pro gamer. Yeah. I used to tournament and play tournaments a lot with 40k. I used to go to SN, used to go to Warhammer World ones, used to go to other tournaments quite a bit. Not that I was amazing at tournaments. I'm not an amazing tournament player, but like I just used to go to a lot of tournaments and build armies to do tournaments and things like that. So when I stopped all of that, I wanted to fill a void with doing something different, and board games kind of really came into that. So my friend Tom, who's a really good close friend of mine since I went to school, like he introduced me to one game called Mansions of Madness, which is like a kind of like a dystopian kind of like almost like a murder mystery kind of like board
it's
game.
a bit like I haven't played it, but from what I know of it, it's a little bit like almost a bit Cluedo-y, isn't it?
Kind of,
where you're
kind of.
you're walking through the house and you discover new rooms.
It's really cool, like a really good game. So that kind of got me into that. But then the other one, which is probably more, I like Mansions a lot, but the other one that I do play a lot as well is also Zombicide. So Zombicide was done by Cool Mini or Not. It's a really easy game. You run around killing zombies, do little missions, but the models are like really, really cool. Like every single one is a character, has a different like set of special rules, has different things. It's really good.
Of the two of those, I guess Zombicide is the more miniature focus.
I'd say that's definitely the one
the case.
you hear about in miniature painting circles more.
Zombicide definitely. Like Mansions has got similar to exactly the same as what you were saying.
It's kind of like this bridge of like board games with miniatures, and then like miniature board games.
Yeah, exactly. And I'd say that Mansions is more like your RuneScape game, and then like your Zombicide is more like your Warhammer with a sense of the miniatures. And the Zombicide models are amazing. Like they're really, really detailed. Loads of character on them.
Saying that you don't build them, do you?
They're literally single. They're literally single piece, which is like amazing. Like like really, really great.
Which is same for these, but that's often the distinction for me between is it board game miniature or is it a miniatures miniature? Do they come on a sprue or not?
Yeah. See, it's a hard one because
is some assembly required?
Yeah. Because the hard thing is that even though those Zombicide models, they do still have like whereas you're saying with these, like the detail is like limited, if that makes sense. The Zombicide ones, they're
very
they
detailed.
They got loads of detail on them, like absolutely crazy amounts of detail. And
like I say though, the detail not being so prominent on these is almost a stylistic choice. I feel like,
definitely.
and it's part of what I enjoyed about it. But we'll get on to that.
Yeah, Zombicide for me is the thing that I really, really like. I've started painting a few of them, like so I haven't like done loads of it. I've got a couple of different editions, like second edition, which is probably my favorite version of it. And then you've got like I've just recently bought like the one that's like a Lord of the Rings-esque kind of version of it. You've got a sci-fi one. So all the models that come with all of them are really good. And I think for me, it's just something nice to, whereas I'm so invested obviously in 40k and like the lore and narrative for like the armies I collect and being like really granular with every detail, this is like the complete flip of that. It's like the character's cool. It's got some cool war gear or got some cool personality, like characteristic things. and it's just something that I can just not really throw too much. Like you're saying with this, you've not got like a strict linear. Has to be this way, which I really really like.
And the pressure's off.
Yeah, totally.
That's the biggest thing.
Totally, yeah.
That I've even in my like small painting session that I've done on that model so far, I felt so like free, and like the pressure was just completely off. And I guess it's the same thing. Maybe like some people can get that within Warhammer. Yeah. But maybe we. Well, I don't know about George yet, but maybe we struggle with that because it's like we see it. There's too much pressure on it.
Yeah, I agree. I can't. I'm very much invested in that, and that's what makes it really difficult to kind of like do Warhammer on not. I don't want to say easy mode, but do it like without that investment, if that makes sense. Yeah. And yeah, so Zombicide for me is probably one of my favorite because there's just such a variation of miniatures within even just a second edition box. There's like a whole variety of different characters and people and all that kind of things that you can do, like and I really really like it. I think the game is really fun as well, like something a little bit different. Okay, like you can the betrayal mechanics, there's all that kind of stuff. So you can do some really fun things.
I've played it a few times and I had a great time. It is definitely a laugh. That is what the big difference between that and Warhammer, I feel like, is like Warhammer can obviously get very intense. Yeah. Although it's more often than not a laugh if you're playing with the right people. But Zombicide is like guaranteed to be funny because there's nothing not funny about like someone making a wrong decision and being trapped in a room with like 20 zombies coming out, something like that.
Yeah, it is really good. And I said I think that those models are like a nice middle ground between kind of like what you're saying here, where you've got a more reserved kind of like details and things on them. If you still want models that have a lot of detail, but the investment isn't there in that sense, like with 40k, I think they're a really good middle ground for that. Which is really really good, great about them. But yeah, so Zombicide for me is the thing that I like a lot.
Yeah. What about you? Have you got something to bring to the table?
So I'm hitting this at a bit of a different angle from both of you, actually. I, much as I try to be, have struggled with getting into war games and board games generally.
Yeah.
However, I love to paint models.
Yeah.
So I've kind of done a little bit of everything, but not ever from a gaming focus. I've never actually bought like a board game with miniatures and then painted it and then played with my friends. That's never actually happened. However, I've seen stuff that looks cool from other systems and just bought like a box of something, or maybe a company has sent me like a couple of kits from like a certain game that I've not played before, and I've tackled a lot of different miniatures from a painting approach. Some that come to mind would be Star Wars Legion. I'm a huge Star Wars fan, so naturally that just seemed like a total no-brainer. When I saw that there was getting into 40k, and then shortly after I saw that there was Star Wars miniatures, it was like, oh my god, that was like so exciting. Right around the time I started painting as well, they dropped the like Clone Wars edition of Star Wars Legion, and I grew up with the prequels, obviously. So that's like that was amazing for me.
Peak Star Wars for George.
Yeah, it's quite astounding that you ended up a Star Wars fan. To be fair, if that was your first introduction to Star Wars.
Well, I grew up with like the Clone Wars TV show and stuff, so I absolutely loved clones versus droids. That was my thing. Yeah, fair. So that was awesome. That being said, though, I've painted like some bolt action stuff. I
didn't realise you painted bolt action.
Yeah, painted loads of bolt action stuff. So I've got behind me Song of Ice and Fire. I've played a few of those games. I think that they're actually probably more similar to what James is speaking about with Zombicide stuff, where it's like they're definitely. I mean, it's like a miniature war game as far as I can tell, but in terms of like the model design standpoint, it feels like a kind of hybrid of like simple, basic detail. You can paint them if you want, but they're not like so basic that they're not fun to paint.
That's really interesting you say that, because we've got some here on the table now. And the first thing I thought of when I saw them was that they're very much like the Zombicide models. It's Call Me In, these Song of Ice and Fire is Call Me In or Not as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's Call Me In or Not. Yeah, so that's 100% then. So they're basically, they're very, very similar in the way they're formulated and done then to the Zombicide models. They come even down to the base.
Yeah. They come. I'll kind of hold the tray up.
It's the same kind of.
It's the same kind of. Like you've seen the Zombicide models, haven't you? Yeah. So it's very very similar.
So
to that.
They literally come in a tray. Yeah, like pre-assembled, just one piece model.
That's exactly the same. Yeah, that's exactly the same as the Zombicide ones. Which is
like
great.
They're very interesting to paint. I think. We kind of touched on it earlier. I think it's that thing of if you really really like the IP, you're going to have fun anyway.
Yeah.
And especially if you're not like deeply invested in like a whole other war game system and you spent loads of money and it's going to be your army, whatever, the pressure is very minimal. Especially when I was approaching this from just purely from painting. It's like, oh, I'll pick up a Star Wars box and I'll just paint some battle droids because that sounds like a fun afternoon. That's completely different to, a new Space Marine kit's out and I want to paint it for my Blood Angels and they mean a lot to me, so I've got to do it perfectly and I'm going to spend 15 evenings doing it.
I think that's kind of the like sweet spot that I've maybe hit with the RuneScape thing, is that like, for me to like the IP enough to want to paint the models means I have some investment in the IP and then I want to get the models right, which is where the pressure comes from.
Yeah.
But because of the nature of this IP, everything just being kind of open and free and anything can kind of, whatever you paint on the model then dictates the story more than the other way around.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like the perfect balance where it's like, yeah, I'm invested because I love the IP and I have like these fond memories of playing the game. Specifically painting that one with like the starter armor. Initially when I was a kid, I didn't even know how to level up. So I spent a lot of hours looking at that starter armor.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of hit the balance like perfectly really for me, I think.
Do you want to learn how to become a better miniature painter, improve your skills, and have the best looking army on the tabletop? Well, now you can with the Siege Studios Patreon. You'll gain instant access to our catalogue of over 350 easy-to-follow, step-by-step tutorials covering a huge variety of colour schemes, painting styles, and techniques, with everything from beginner-focused foundation tutorials to full character masterclasses. Plus, with the team adding new lessons every single week, you'll never run out of techniques to learn or skills to improve. And if that's not enough, you also get access to our critique clinic, where you can get video feedback from us on your miniatures with advice on how to progress your painting so you'll always know what to work on next and see improvements as fast as possible. So if you're ready to take the next steps in miniature painting, head to patreon.com/Siege Studios or check the link in this episode's description. What are some of the key things you think you could learn from painting another miniature if you've specifically done a lot of 40k stuff in the past, or just Games Workshop miniatures in general, whether that be Necromunda or Age of Sigmar or whatever? What do you think as a painter are some of the key things you can learn from not only painting other models but just working with them in general, like even down to like building and cleaning and prep?
I think models by other manufacturers or even board game companies and stuff like that, because let's be honest, like I'll say it as it is, like the production quality of Games Workshop models is absolutely astronomical in the sense of how good the plastic kits are. When you start looking at miniatures from other game systems, I think you appreciate the high quality plastics way more, but it also makes you as a painter, it challenges you that maybe
Problem solving. Right?
Yeah, it challenges you because the miniatures maybe aren't as well defined, or maybe that certain things aren't sort of like as sharp or as neat, or whatever the case may be. It actually makes you have to paint on to make it look as good as possible, rather than just have this amazingly pristine, sharp finished model. Does that make sense? I think that's something that I'm very conscious of.
I think as well, that resonated with me when you spoke about it earlier, with not having a box art reference was very alien to me.
Yeah.
When it came to painting the Song of Ice and Fire miniatures, they come in these little cards, but it's just like artwork. Like it's like a painting, and like the details don't match one to one with what's on the miniature.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen Game of Thrones and I've read the books, and like I understand what they should look like, but having it just be like slightly, I'm so used to from Warhammer stuff, it just being exactly what's on the picture, and I can paint it to look exactly like that if I want, or maybe I'll change some colors.
Yeah.
But interpreting detail in this way and having to kind of make your own plan up as you go along, it does make you stop and scratch your head, I think.
Yeah,
and like you said, it's like problem solving.
It's problem solving.
And I think that arms you to, in the future, when you are dealing with a different project and you have got to make some of those decisions, maybe for the first time, you can rely on your previous experience with dealing with other projects, and like being out of your comfort zone more makes you way more competent in your comfort zone.
Yeah, I think also if you spend a lot of time painting other stuff that isn't like GW stuff, and you've done GW for a long time, and you pick up some of these other models and you spend a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, whatever it is, painting them, you get almost set in stone how you're approaching them because of how the model is. So then when you return and flip to something else that potentially is a different material, or it's a different quality of fabrication or whatever, you almost feel like you can paint better on those because the models themselves are probably better defined, if that makes sense. So I think that there's a real beauty of have a variation and painting other stuff as well, because it means that you can approach maybe the thing you do more of the time with a better mindset as well, which is the other thing I was going to say.
Well, it can make you question your processes as well. It's like, I've always done this for so long, I can't even remember why. And then when you have to approach something in a new way, because of the circumstances of trying a new miniature, say, for example, I always typically prep my models in a certain way with certain products, and I always use a certain type of glue. And then you stop and think like, well, why?
Yeah.
So maybe you have to, like I just said, for example, they're using a different glue. Maybe it's been like, well, I've always used this glue since I started because it's just always what I've had. And then, okay, that glue doesn't work on these miniatures, so I've got to try something else. And then you might find out, actually, this glue is way better. I should be using this on my Warhammer stuff. Or a different primer. Like maybe that doesn't behave with, like you're used to always priming stuff with an airbrush, and then you've got to try spray can because maybe it's not sticking so well. And then you go, actually, this stuff's great. It's a lot quicker. Maybe I should be doing some of my other models.
So one of the things that this has particularly made me think about is we talk about this quality difference a lot in terms of like, Games Workshop models are so far ahead, which is true on like an objective. Just if you're talking about finely detailed plastic models, that is true. But I think it made me initially, the reason I didn't go to other manufacturers or experience other gaming systems and things like that was because of that. Because it was like, well, I already do the one that has the best models.
Yeah.
So why am I going to go and spend some time on one that doesn't have as good models? And then I think actually what it makes you, when you do experience these other models, it potentially makes you rethink just the context of what we're talking about. Like these games don't need models that look like Warhammer or as high quality as that. Warhammer needs models that are that good. Certain games don't need models that are that good.
I think that because the lore and all that kind of stuff is so rich and so factually like granular, to have a model that doesn't represent that and do it justice.
Yeah,
that's the reason
I think
why.
that's part of it. And then also just part of it is that painting the models within Warhammer is its own entire thing.
Yeah, cool.
So it makes sense that the models are also of the highest possible quality. Whereas we're sitting here talking about some of these games and we're like, you don't even really need to paint them. Or it might not actually be intended to be painted. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So
it's like Risk. You don't, the models in Risk are absolutely atrocious.
Exactly.
And
you can try and paint them if you want, but like they're not going to look. You're not going to be able to paint them the same way you paint Games Workshop models anyway.
It can make you question whether those things that we like reiterate all the time, whether they're actually even true or not. Because sometimes you try some other miniatures from another game system, you're like, they are really good.
They're really good, but I just think the context is so different, and I don't know why I let it put me off for so long. Like you can enjoy both,
but my point being, like, it's a phrase that's kicked around a lot is like GW's the best, GW's the best, GW makes best plastics. And then that like echo, when you hear that for so long, meanwhile, outside of your head, all these miniature manufacturers are making other stuff and they're getting really good at it. And then I look like I've got a Star Wars Legion sprue here, hard plastic. I'm going to argue that the details on this are as sharp and as crisp as any 40k sprue.
They're still really good. Yeah. I had a good look at this sprue actually, because I was like, it was really interesting. So I was like, oh, what's that? And yeah, like I was really surprised at how good like the sprue was. It's really good. Really good. I will wonder what the little handle is though. Like
probably something for manufacturing.
Well, that's so you can carry it.
So you can carry it, yeah.
from your shelf to your desk.
Yeah. But no, it is really good.
Do you see my point though? It's like you hear these things so often, you just take it as fact without questioning it.
Yeah. I do.
And I think there is an element of truth there. I do think on the whole, GW I definitely still put at the top.
Yeah.
But people say that as if anything else is like not even worth your time. And I don't think that's true.
No, I agree completely.
And again, it could even not even, it doesn't even have to come down to actual quality. It can come down to the design choices. Whereas like I'm saying, these RuneScape models shouldn't be any more detailed than they are.
No, you're right.
They should be this simple and fun to paint, because that, even just from base coating and shading it, looks like the RuneScape character that I remember. Whereas if I started to do like NMM all over it, like, or even like full on box art edge highlights on absolutely everything, it'll probably look good, but it won't look reminiscent of what I think
it's
would.
Also a way of like trying to point score fun, as if you have a miniature that is objectively higher quality than this, as if you're going to have more fun with that by default. When, for example, if you took an Age of Sigmar miniature that I couldn't care less about, but it's objectively really high detailed, or you gave me a fairly basic stormtrooper, I can tell you for a fact which one I'm going to have more fun painting.
Yeah.
The whole point of a hobby is it's supposed to be fun.
I
Yeah.
would say that is because you do love Star Wars as well.
But that's
exactly
the point.
what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the point. Yeah.
It's not. What I'm saying is, it's not like the only thing that should be important to you
It's
when
the quality
picking
of the
another
miniature,
game.
yeah.
The quality of the miniature shouldn't be the most important thing to you.
No, that's
Yeah.
the thing. Like I've flat out said it in this. Like the reason why I love 40k models is because I love 40k first and foremost. Like I love the setting and the narrative. Like the fact the models are as good as they are is just a bonus. Do you know what I mean? Like
Like you love 40k enough that if the models looked like some of the lower level models that you're talking about, you'd still.
I still
love the 90s
I've got a
models.
Mordian army. Like I'm not being funny. Like like they're all single post.
That's the proof. He's got the old stuff.
Yeah,
exactly.
he still buys the old
I
stuff.
back up what I say. Yeah, but I would also just chuck into the mix on these, like specifically on these RuneScape ones as well. That the fact that they're specifically with RuneScape, the fact that you get to stylize and tailor your character how you want them to be, that actually makes perfect sense with the models being more basic, because then if you do paint them, you can paint them exactly how you want and add stuff onto them.
Yeah.
And you're always got this pattern on this bit of material, or he's got this detail on the armor.
And there is certain things where like
So-
I'm having to answer certain questions. For example, on the night, because it's the only one that I've started painting and the only one I've actually thought about. It's almost entire. It's 99% just the metallic armor, because that's what the character looks like when it's wearing full knight armor.
Yeah.
As a model, would it look better if I painted the trims and stuff a different color? Yeah, probably, because it wouldn't look 99% silver.
Yeah.
The weapon that he's holding, the first 3 of the basic levels,
They're all
first
sil-
one
they're all
is
silver.
the first one's bronze,
Okay.
which I think is what I'm going to go for because it's the starter one. Then it's iron, which is like a dark silver, obviously, and then it's steel, which is a lighter silver. So there was a bit of a thing was like, oh, he's going to be so metallic. Like if I do a bronze sword and then he's in full
silver armor.
he's going to be so metallic, and it might look a bit silly. So like there is still an element there where I'm like, okay, should I bend it a little bit and give him like a bit of a better sword, even though it doesn't quite make sense, but the model will look cooler, and it wouldn't be like outside of the possibility. You could have a sword that was, not to get too into the nitty gritty, but if you train a certain level, you can hold a better weapon.
Yeah.
You have to train a completely different skill to wear better armor.
Right. Okay.
So you could there is actually an entire gameplay strategy on old school RuneScape where you on purpose think it's like keep your defense really low, because then your overall level doesn't go high, but then you get your attack really high. So you've got the maximum amount of attack, you're holding the best weapon, but your defense is rubbish.
Right. Okay.
So you can then fight people that are also a lower level than you and stuff like that.
Okay.
So there is precedent for it. So I'm already doing this like mathematics in my head.
Min-maxing
I'm like,
pro
I
gamer
could,
over here.
I could actually give him a better weapon, and he could just be one of those dudes.
I'm sure
you know
in the
what I mean?
game that the paint job does not dictate the strength or weakness of the model.
Well,
Joe.
no, not in the board game, of course, But
I'm actually on the record, kind of as part of what you're saying. I'm actually on the record of saying I wish some of the GW releases were simpler, purely so that there is more scope to do what you want
More
without having to get your
customization.
hobby knife out
Yeah.
and get rid of stuff so you can change it.
Yeah.
I'd
So
argue that's probably happened though. Like if you look at like the intercessor kit, it's quite a like in the sense of
That's exactly what I'm saying. I've been
But
in
George has
favour
been
of that
pro
design.
that, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that is something that it's really opened my eyes up to, is that actually it doesn't necessarily matter how much, like the quality of the models can differ, and you can still have a great time with them. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No.
And again, the aim isn't for everyone to be producing the exact same models as Games Workshop, and I feel like we maybe get lost on that a little bit sometimes.
Yeah. No.
100%. Would the overall message you think based on this conversation be then find an IP that you really, really love, and if they've got miniatures, go for that rather than just looking for the eye candy of like the best model?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so definitely. Like again, for me, Zombicide was just a random freak occurrence. Like Boxy came down one weekend and went, "Do you want to play Zombicide?"
You enjoyed the game, though, right? So then you were
I enjoyed
invested.
the game. I was
Yeah.
like, "What the hell is this?" And then like we played it, and I was like, "This is great!" Like, you
Yeah,
know.
it doesn't have to be an existing IP that you love, to
No.
be fair.
So
That's what's happened with me. But
yeah, it was the same with like with Tom. He brought Mansions around, and I was like, "What the hell is this?" The models aren't amazing, but the game was like incredible, and I was like, "I'm invested." Like, you know.
So I guess the other route then is if there's a game that you're in love with, or just generally speaking, maybe try some other games, and if you fall in love with it, that will make painting the miniatures all the more worthwhile, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I think it's like the ultimate version of, we say sometimes about, if you're painting an army, have a separate character project on the side or something like that. I think having one of
A model
something
like
from
that.
a completely different system that you're painting in a completely different style, that's made of a completely different material, has a completely different purpose.
Yeah.
That's like the ultimate version of that. Like, I'll have these on the side as my like fun, no pressure paint things for the next however many months, I think now.
Yeah.
If you feel that you're plateauing as a hobbyist as well, that could be a really, really good way to break that, would be try something completely different.
Yeah, definitely.
Not only because you have to paint them in a different way, but you have to prepare the models in a different way. You might not have box art to lean on.
Yeah. Well, like we said,
it's not your comfort zone. You know,
like we said, it's a challenge. It's something that, you know, when you've got to think differently to what you normally do, it breeds creativity, you know, which I think is good.
Just before we skip on to the next thing, then I did just want an overview on the RuneScape thing, because as I say, they were kind enough to send it in, and I've had a few games of it now, and I can tell you, as a RuneScape enthusiast, an OG RuneScape player,
2.0.
it's brilliant. Like, in terms of old school RuneScape specifically, it's brilliant in terms of doing the IP justice. If you ask me, they're ticking all the right boxes. Like the quests, there's certain details on these models, or like the characters that they've decided to include. If you looked at them without knowing a lot of things, that some of them might be quite bizarre. There's one here that I've included where there's a chef holding a pickaxe, for example. But if you play RuneScape, you have probably walked around at some point wearing a chef's hat and apron and wielding a pickaxe for little to no reason. But it's little things like that where it's like there was clearly a reason for some involvement of someone who genuinely really loved playing RuneScape at some point, and I really appreciated that. And just in general, the game is really fun. It's like a mix between, it is a board game, but there is a lot of kind of role-playing elements to it. So you have a character sheet, for example, and you build your skills up depending on where you're sitting on the board. You can do different things at different times. And there's little mini quests. The three main campaigns, I think there's 3 or 4, which are all like the villains that you can see are the bigger models. They're all kind of based on quests that existed in old school RuneScape.
Oh, right,
so they're reminiscent of that. A lot of the dialogue back and forth is reminiscent of that. It's like, I played it as someone who obviously was looking for that stuff and really, really enjoyed it. And then my girlfriend played it as someone who has no idea what's going on, and she still really enjoyed it as well. So I think it's a really good, easy to pick up game. If you have any interest in RuneScape at all, I would suggest you look into it, I think. Sure. Or if you're just looking for a new board game to try out that has some of those like more role-playing elements. Because I think even some of the games that you guys are mentioning, they don't have that element to it. I don't think, like the role-playing,
definitely not
character building, leveling up,
No,
different skills, inventory, and to the point of like, it's almost designed so that you don't finish a game in one sitting. You have your character sheets, and then you have your little like plastic bags that you put your character sheets into with all your tokens and stuff, so you can then sit back down in a week and pick up where you left off. Kind of thing.
Cool.
It's really cool.
That's very different dimensions or two.
It's really cool, and it's kind of like a simplified thing of what I enjoyed about like D&D, for example, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'm sure you'll hear about it more on this podcast because I'm going to be spending some time doing it. It's restocked now as well. That was the whole reason for the promotional element of this. They've restocked it. You can get it from the Steam Forge website. I would highly recommend it.
Yeah, there'll be a link for that in the description. We'll have a link to Element Games as well if you want to try any of the games that myself or James mentioned. You can find them out down there. Affiliate link helps the show. Should we get on to the news?
Yes.
Yeah, let's do it.
Models.
Yeah,
more models.
Yeah, boy. Yeah, boy.
I love, by the way, we did not plan initially that I actually clocked this in the intro as well, but it was like when you were rattling off what we were going to do, you were like, yeah, we're going to be doing, like, if you're bored of Warhammer, here's the models that you can paint. Also, we're going to be talking about the new Warhammer models that are out. There's new models every week at this point, isn't there? So, we've had 3 notable releases.
Yeah, I didn't actually notice that we didn't speak about the Krieg and the Eldar. So I think we'll talk about that in the post show for the patrons. But there has been some new reveals this week.
Yeah.
So maybe we can catch up with relevance.
Yeah.
First one, I guess, off the back of Middle Earth, last week being the topic. There's a new miniature for Middle Earth. It's Hera, daughter of Helm.
You know, thank God they're releasing some models for this dead game, eh?
Yeah.
finally breathing some life into this completely dead game. No, this is one of the coolest ones they've done out of the new batch. I
agree.
Yeah.
I thought this model was fantastic.
They've all been good. I'll say that, but this is one of the coolest ones, I think.
Is she like one of the a king's daughter? Is he basically like in the film where
I don't know. I guess this is
Eowyn.
Yeah, is she like Eowyn?
I guess these are all new.
Daughter?
These are all new characters
Yeah,
to a certain extent. Although actually, you got pulled up on that as well last week. Was that a lot of these characters I think do have some existing relevance in Tolkien's works as well, but they've been pulled from to be put in the film.
I haven't seen the new film.
I'm not 100%.
I want to
sure
go and see the new film. I haven't seen it yet. I want to go see it.
I think it's just come out last week. So
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to seeing it, and I'm sure I'll understand a lot of this. A lot of these characters. I'll either be more interested to paint some of these models or less interested. But yeah, it's a really cool model. And I tell you one thing I wasn't aware of that you touched on last week was the relevance of there constantly being a on mount and on foot model in these packs, because my thought process was
I tried to do some research for these topics. They come into these completely
my thought process was I'd always thought, why don't I just sell them separately so you can choose which one? Why have you got to buy both? But then, if there's a use for both, that makes sense.
So when
I was literally, so it all fell into place. When
I was like, that makes sense.
Right.
I really like that though, because it means that for game dynamics, it means that if your horse does or mount does die, you can just carry on playing the game, obviously with the miniature. I think it's cool. I think
they should introduce that to 40k, where
we said that.
They should do Outriders on foot.
James literally said, if you had like a
Space Marine
captain on a bike or something.
Yeah, and then he turns into a captain.
Exactly.
Yeah, that should be a thing.
Yeah, I think that'd be mega. I really like the model. I think it's good. I think the horse sculpt is actually really nice. I'm not too sure on the front feet being off the base. I mean, I'd be a bit worried about that.
But just push the model.
Yeah, you can push it a little bit.
I think it's a really, really cool model, and I mean, I'm looking at that horse and thinking that would make an amazing horse if you wanted to make like an Imperial Guard character or something like that. You could easily put that on there.
Yeah, I like the stance on the on foot. With I like a
it's very stoic, isn't it?
Stoic, observant kind of stance, and that's a good one.
Yeah,
sword down by your side. Yeah,
thought it was good.
Next, we've got a new Iron Hands Legion Praetor for Horus Heresy. I guess Heresy models are back in vogue, are they?
They are,
kicking them up again.
Very busy at the minute. I really like this. I thought it was quite cool. He's got a little cyber friend on his shoulder. I think
we were saying before the show, this is definitely giving Sid from Toy Story.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
100%. Yeah.
I think you're underselling it by saying you really like it. You've been obsessed with it.
I thought it was great when I saw it. Yeah, I really liked it when I first saw it. Yeah, no, I really, really liked this when it came out. When I saw it, it's kind of got like a bit of a Dr. Octopus kind of vibe with the mechadendrites, and then you've got this like you said, this Sid spider servo skull.
I'll be honest, I didn't even notice the spider thing because it's a lot of detail on a small model.
Yeah,
so it kind of all blends in.
And silver.
It kind of all blends into one, but they're kind of pushed into a corner with that, I guess, because that's the
color scheme,
aesthetic, and that's the color scheme, and what else are you going to do, kind of thing.
Yeah, but no, I thought it was really cool. So really liked it.
Finally, I'm going to get this pronunciation wrong, I'm sure. Galen and Doralia outnumbered.
I love this.
It's cool, isn't it?
I think this is a really cool, like the fact that you can. I love these models where like sometimes they do these mini diorama things and they feel quite contained, and it is what it is. So I'm thinking of what was the Black Templars one?
Bayard's Revenge.
Bayard's Revenge. So for example, for that, anything could really be going on around it, But with this, it's kind of built into it that you instantly know exactly what is happening around. Like the diorama can go on for as long as your mind wants it to, kind of thing. And I absolutely love that.
This is screaming to be used for like a duel of some sort.
Yeah,
you can have like some zombies or some plague
it's
models.
so
like,
good.
Yeah, like she's shooting arrows with a crossbow into something and he's about to kill it. Like, it's just really cool.
Yeah,
Like,
I don't
really
even
cool.
know who are these people.
No idea.
What is it?
No,
I have no
no
idea what this is
idea.
from. Is this from one of the shows or something? The Warhammer Plus shows potentially.
I am not sure at all whatsoever.
What's
but-
this Sigmarite superstars?
So are they like?
They're witch hunters. It just says they're
okay.
witch hunters.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
well, witch
they're
hunters
rad.
are pretty much always cool models. To be
Yeah,
fair.
they
So
are.
that makes sense. Yeah, I couldn't really work out because they just look like humans. So I didn't know if it was like
But I
it didn't quite fit like Cities of Sigmar type stuff. So I didn't know if it was Cities of Sigmar necessarily. But I do also like there's an option to have them both on separate.
But they
bases.
also come with separate 28mm bases, so you can use them as alternatives to their current miniatures in a Cities of Sigmar army.
Oh, they are in Cities of Sigmar. Okay, well they keep getting better. Cities of Sigmar. So yeah,
that makes me like them more now.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
they can go in. I was going to say I do like how it can separate out onto two bases if you want.
That's going to be a magnetising job, isn't it? For sure.
Yeah, what, so you can take them
display
off.
them,
Yeah,
magnetize at the feet.
100%.
Yeah,
Yeah,
100%.
just some magnets in under the
I
underside.
genuinely, I do really like those models.
I like the Witch Hunter range in general because I think it's got so much ability to be converted to make them look like Inquisition and stuff like that because of the way they look. I think there's loads of scope to do stuff with them. So yeah, really like these.
Big
Other
fan.
than that, no other news this week. Nothing's happened. It's just Games Workshop.
Yeah,
New
just
miniatures.
all
That's
Games
it.
Workshop new miniatures.
That's
That
it.
is the news.
That is the news. Do you want to get even more from these podcast episodes? Patreon is the place to get exclusive Paint Perspective content every single week, including extended versions of the podcast featuring bonus segments you won't see anywhere else. Plus, as a member, you'll get exclusive Discord access, including monthly hobby hangouts with us, opportunities to ask your questions on upcoming shows, plus all of our podcast content completely ad-free. To learn more, head to the link in this episode's description or go to patreon.com/Siege Studios. On that note, it is, of course, question of the week time. Thank you, everyone, for submitting your questions for question of the week. If you have a question that you want us to answer on a future episode of the podcast, leave it in the comments. This week, Carl LM says, is there anything miniature manufacturers could do that will be a quality of life improvement for painting and painters? I thought this was quite relevant to this week's conversation, actually, talking about other manufacturers.
I've got an answer
Yeah.
for this, but as soon as I saw this, I got an answer.
Go for it.
I want to make capes great again. All right, okay. I want capes to be detachable and separate. I don't want them to be
Oh,
joined
that's good.
joined to the backpack. Tabards dangling between the legs when I don't want a tabard.
Some of the shoulder
Some-
on the
yeah,
shoulder pad,
yeah.
but some of it
I
separately.
I want capes to be an optional part that is sculpted to fit perfectly on the model, or the model can be sans cape. That's
Yeah.
what I want.
I like the idea. I like what you said there on the end. I want an option to not have the cape.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want that to be a choice.
Or tabard.
Or I can take that cape and put it on something else.
Yes.
I want a
That is
universal
exact-
connection.
That is.
Do you know what
that is
the best
I want.
example of that is? In the Death Guard range, both Mortarion and Typhus have entirely optional smoke coming out of their like weird hoof thing or like weird bone
Vent
things,
things, yeah.
vents. You can literally just leave it off, or you can put them on.
Yeah.
And it makes no difference. It's just purely do you enjoy it on there, or do you enjoy it off there?
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
fine. If they could do something like that with capes,
I think
yeah,
That
it's
is
good.
what I want.
with the caveat being that I would like that cape in one piece, please, because
Yeah,
I
yeah.
feel. You know the
I've-
do you know
I was-
the Legion Praetors
Yes.
from the Horus Heresy
Yeah,
box?
yeah,
Have you seen them capes?
Yeah,
I'm
they're-
going to find a photo and put it on screen now of the instructions for that. That is the most infuriated I've ever been putting a GW kit together in my life.
think
When-
I had that little piece, and I couldn't figure out which way it was meant to go.
I
Yeah.
know the exact bit you're talking about. When me and Ed worked on the Age of Darkness box, and we done the Blood Angels. Ed was like, "Oh yeah, I'll take the characters." I was like, "Yeah, okay, you take them. That's fine." I'd seen the capes, and I was like,
I
Yeah.
felt like I was like, this must be me. Like I must
No.
be stupid because
Yeah.
there's no way it can be this complicated. And I had the little piece, and I just couldn't work out the orientation
Yeah.
or what part it connected
well,
to.
My answer, it kind of fits in with that actually, because my answer was going to be, and again, like I've actually only ever built Games Workshop models because these required no building. So I've only actually, they required cleaning obviously, but I think with Warhammer specifically, and I would say any models that come on a sprue that require building, is I think the instructions need to be clearer. They need to be well, I need more information. I can't have like a single image of an arrow with this tiny little part going into where it's supposed to go, but then the angle of it's a little bit off and it's a bit ambiguous where it's
really
actually supposed to
vary.
stick to.
It can really
That kind of
vary, I
thing.
think, yeah.
I want you to go all out. I want videos. I want videos of detailing, building every single bit. That's what I want.
You clearly didn't build many of the original Forge World models where you just got a picture of.
I did, yeah.
It was the black and white tank, and it was like
honestly, like horrendous. Yeah.
My favourite part was that the instructions would number the parts,
Yeah.
but the parts weren't numbered.
Yeah.
And do you know what? As well,
my friend used to, with a Sharpie on the bare resin parts, used to write on with a Sharpie the number.
But sometimes you can't tell because it'll be like two of the same thing.
Yeah,
They'll be like inverted.
Yeah.
Like say it's like a mirror image.
Yeah.
And you'll have like part 31 for this side and part 32 for this side.
Yeah.
But looking at the pieces, you can't work out which one's which. It's like, well, is it this one meant to go on that side, facing the other way, or vice versa?
So I would basically, my suggestion would be more effort or more like quality control going into instructions for building. Because also the other thing is that there's been a few cases of instructions being wrong.
Yeah,
numbers
being wrong is still really quite common, actually.
Yeah,
just like the part number.
The one I remember most common was the Plague Burst crawler. There was it had you like there was one certain thing. The instruction told you to put it on upside down or something, and it's like so you would do it, and then it would just look weird.
Yeah.
But you were like, oh, that's what the instructions said, kind of thing.
Yeah. I think GW instructions in particular have come a long way.
Yeah,
in terms of now the like coloured instructions,
the coloured things
like
and stuff
colour
like that is
coded.
very good.
But occasionally there still is a scenario where the photo that they're kind of showing the angle of it from is the least optimal to work out where the hell the piece goes.
I would just say I personally want a completely unreasonable amount of
you want to scroll through like a list and it'll be like specific instructions for Joe.
What
and
Joe
in the
wants.
video they'll be like, now Joe, what you need to do
here's what you do.
Joe buys the kit, goes home, within about 10 minutes there's a knock at the door, and then an instruction assembly assistant arrives.
If we could do that, then I don't want to ask for too much, but if
when you like order stuff from IKEA and it's like, do you want someone to come to your house and build it for you?
If they could do that, then perfect. That'd be my suggestion. Just a bit more, that's the least we deserve, I think. A little bit more in the instructions.
I just want better capes, or the option of cape.
If you're getting detachable capes, I need more clear options as well.
You want to know where that detachable cape attaches to?
Yeah.
Our final weekly tradition on the podcast is, of course, hobby hacks, which is where we share a little quick tip with you can implement into your hobby sessions. If you like to listen along while you're building away your army at home. Joe?
Yep.
What you got?
It's not quite a hobby hack, but it is something that
it's always a good way to start a hobby hack.
It's sort of something that
caveat.
Everything that comes after that.
I'll be honest.
Take with a pinch of
salt. It's not a hobby hack, and it's very specific to a situation.
Brilliant. They'll love that.
But having found myself in this situation, I wish someone told me about it. That's all I would say. So I think you might remember a little while ago that I explained about I live on a third floor flat.
Yeah.
So there's obviously a flat underneath me, and I was being a bit. I've never lived in a flat before as an adult, so I don't really know the level of like how much noise is going to go down. I don't want to be annoying. Do you know what I mean? I don't want to be like. I definitely don't want to have someone come and knock and say like, "Oh, you're being too loud." I'll just feel embarrassed or whatever. So my biggest worry about having an airbrush was obviously the
vibration of the compressor.
Yeah, because it's not quiet, is it? It's like quiet. The vibration and the noise is a bit like.
I guess it depends on your compressor, but it's not quiet.
All I know is as well from being, when I was back with my parents, if they were downstairs and I was upstairs, they could definitely hear it. Like it was definitely sending a thing through the house.
Yeah.
So I was a bit like nervous on it. Like I didn't want to.
It's very considerate of you, Joe. Very considerate.
It's quite selfish because I don't want to have to deal with the confrontation.
Joe doesn't want to have to ever see these people face to face in
I
his
don't
life.
want to. I don't want to talk to them.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to talk to people. I don't want to have to explain. I'm painting toy soldiers, and it's a little compressor for my little spray gun. But what I looked up was I thought, well, there's got to be a solution for other appliances, more common appliances for this sort of situation. And it turns out there is actually a kind of memory foam type thing.
Yeah.
You can buy like a little sheet.
Like a pad.
Sheet. Yeah, like a pad. Quite a big pad that's intended to put underneath your washing machine.
Oh, okay. Right.
So that it absorbs the vibration of the washing machine. So I bought one of them. I think it's about £15 from like Screwfix or something, or like one of the Tool Station or one of them ones. And
did you cut it up, or have you got the massive mat? Just for your little compressor.
I've cut it into 4 and stacked it on top of each other. So I've got this like mega
pad,
mega memory foam pad, and I've put my compressor on top of that.
Killed the vibrations?
No complaints so far. Pretty much killed the vibrations. I was like,
so that's your metric for whether or not it's working, is whether or not someone has knocked on the door.
They haven't complained yet.
Yeah.
So as far as you're concerned, it's working because no one said it's not working.
Yeah, that's all I can go off, right? That's all I can go off.
Yeah, no.
So yeah, I would just suggest that if you're in a flat and you want to get your,
that's a good shout.
That's good. I'd say that's a hack.
And also, I was like testing it. I was like testing it with like one, and then I would turn it on and I'd like run into because my flat's quite long. It doesn't go like, it's not like a square or anything. It's like a long corridor with all the rooms off of it kind of thing. So the living room is like a couple of rooms away from the office or whatever. So I would like, but then the office is quite near like the communal area. So I would like have it refilling, then I'd like quickly run outside to like test. I'll be like, I'll put an extra sheet on it. Okay, I'll run back outside. And I can't hear it outside, so I reckon they can't hear it downstairs.
I'd say it's a hack.
It's a hack.
I'd say it's a
There's
hack.
got to be plenty of people listening that live in, flats and apartments.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, it was a big question mark for me when I moved in, because I was like, I'm probably not going to be able to do that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah.
And the musician in me instantly went back to drum kits in flats.
Yeah.
And you had to build like a subfloor thing.
Yeah. Well, my initial idea, was to build some kind of like
riser.
Yeah. But then this seems to have done the trick. So
nice. Can I offer a simpler solution that you can try?
Get a pillow.
No. Tennis balls. Cut them in half. Use them as feet. Promise you it works.
Well, I've already done this now. But,
and I think probably hacking a tennis ball in half is probably...
No, it's easy. Get a little junior hacksaw, cut that thing in half.
Hang on.
And then flip it.
Now I've got to buy a hacksaw.
He's getting tools out. Hang on.
You went to Screwfix.
Yeah. Well, I've done this now, so I guess you can try either. Maybe I'll put
tennis balls
underneath, and then put them on the riser. I'm sure if that does help you, please comment. Yeah.
Nice. Okay. We'll round it out there. Massive thank you for listening to this week's episode of Paint Perspective. We're going to jump over now to the post show, which is a bonus feature for our patrons. So if you want to get even more podcast content from us, extended versions of the show without any ads, then check the link in the description. Otherwise, we will see you next week. So I found another mental shop that sells Warhammer.
Sort me out, there's an apocalypse coming.
It's definitely where I'm going to go.
He'll be laughing, when the apocalypse.
Because when the apocalypse hits, not only can I barricade the doors, but I'll have plenty to do because there's loads of Warhammer in there.
Yeah.
So I won't be bored.